Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today is the first time that I'm filming from a new place, and I'm just really excited because I have the possibility to film with a lot of natural light, which is always preferable. And as you can imagine, it's been a bit of an ordeal, to be honest, because moving now in Sydney is crazy. There's so many moving companies, and 90% of them are actually scammers. It's really, I don't know, there's absolutely no regulations at the time. And there will be, because you know there's a lot of reports and stuff, but for the time being we really have to be careful not to get scammed. And I'm sorry to say, unfortunately we did. So it was a bit of an ordeal, and it lasted for like, you know, it went on forever, and we're still living in the middle of boxes. And that's one of the reasons why I thought, you know, today I'm actually going to film an unboxing of this little gem amongst all of the other boxes, because it does make me feel a little bit better to be able to at least, you know, appreciate something that just came to me yesterday. Actually, this is the first, I realized just now, this is the first tarot deck that I received at a new address. So, and it's one of the really, really beautiful ones. So I'm quite happy that this, you know, I opened up the new place to new Tarot and Oracle decks, starting with this one. Let's have a look. So I'm going to have an unboxing, as I said before. There's going to be first impressions, and there's going to be a few pairings with Tarot and Oracle decks. This is the Ad Orbita Tarot, and let's have a look. Day 3. So it's starting to look a little bit better. I've been working for hours, and I realized I'm moving boxes from the center of the room to the side of the room. Is not exactly tidying up, and it's probably just, you know, not wanting to look at the problem. But so these are all decks, all of these boxes, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, about 15 boxes of decks. And I'm not entirely sure that it's all of them, but this is my filming space, and I'm really happy about it because it works really well. And this is my desktop space, which is really good, and the light for filming is absolutely fantastic, so I count that as a win. So as I was saying, the Ad Orbita Tarot, I got it from someone in my Facebook trading group. So this person is really lovely because they always make sure that the packaging is, you know, it's not going to get the tarot damage on transit, which is a very, it's a possibility. It happened a couple of times to me before. And let's have a look, because I'm actually really excited about this tarot deck. I know that the author, which is the same author as the, for example, the Ophidia Rosa, the Pythia Botanica, the Maiden Oracle, and the Viola Ex Umbra Tarot as well. Quite recent, I think, that publication, and I'll make sure to put all of the links in the description box below. I think it's the name of the, let's say, the not the creator, but the website, for example, is Lila and Rose. So I'll make sure to just link everything in the description box below for you to find if you are interested. Now, I have the Ophidia Rosa and I have the Pythia Botanica, and I really wanted the Maiden Oracle. However, when I found out what the Maiden Oracle is about, and I watched a couple of YouTube videos, I actually prefer to go and buy this one, the Ad Orbita. So this is from 2020. The creator is Nicole Rallis and Peter Henry Reed, and yeah, it comes, if you're familiar with this creator, all of the products in their website are pretty much the same, in the sense that they comes with a very nice, very sturdy 2-part box like this, and then they have sometimes, but most of the time it's a leaflet like this one. It opens up like a concertina kind of structure. There you go. I must say it's a very good quality. It feels like it's almost plastic or laminated. It's probably laminated. You don't find a huge amount of information, but I do believe that I really like, for example, the Ophidia Rosa. Generally speaking, what you can find is a bit more information when it comes to the major arcanas, as you can see here. So the Fool, for example, grandfather of Zeus, Uranus spins 7 planets from our sun, and Asta flower is here to begin for beginnings to come. So with tether to an orbit closer to home, our gravity is free to explore on our own. Be far or be close yet, we choose where we go. That is, so as for the Ophidia Rosa, there's always a reference to the cards, but there's always also a bit of a reminder of what the meaning or the essence of that card is about, which I really like. And when it comes to the minor arcanas, for example, let's have a look at the Four of Cups. Constant movement, the push and pull, the gravity tossing us from days to years, through fears and tribulation, yearning, hurting, coping, and hoping. Creates a shallow protection. It is above and below our surface, yet never forget it is born from our present tense. We have earned this settled seat, a safe space beyond the swell. See, that's an interesting take on the Four of Cups. To me, this reminds me of a more numerological approach to the Suit of Cups, where you know, the element of water that reminds us of the fluidity of the ebb and flow of life, and also the sentiments and the feelings, is actually numerologically seen as something producing consolidation. So in consolidation of feelings, it's not being tipped over to the stagnation. So there is no restlessness, there is no boring moments in these Four of Cups. And I always appreciate a numerological approach. Let me just see the Three of Swords, just to make sure. So the Three of Swords are paths are on track, yet brace for an impact. Even celestial bodies crash, break and burn. Moons themselves were once a piece of a larger mass. Ad Orbita. Three of Swords suggest war is in the air, an upheaval of intention that one ought to beware. Okay, it's not entirely your usual heartbreak. It does have a bit of a negative side to it, but then again, it is the Three of Swords, and the Suit of Swords is the suit of the mind. So saying that there's an impact to be had also represents the growing of the three, perhaps. What about the Ten of Swords? I'm always curious about these two cards. When a supernova flashes, it forces the speed of light into a crisis. While it is daunting to know that our home star will erupt under its own pressure, moments like these are inevitable and, in a way, necessary for growth. There is a halo around harrowing times where new stars form and gravity flows wide. That is a really beautiful interpretation of the Ten of Swords. Really, really resonating with me. Absolutely. There is, you know, the supernovas are such interesting bodies that it's just, sometimes I feel like I wish I knew more about astrophysics, because it's something absolutely fascinating. And I have to say, I have my hopes high for this tarot deck, because I had seen it in a few post on Instagram, or I even watched a walkthrough on YouTube. So this is the inside of the bottom part. That's very nice. I think it does remind, let's say, of the elements of the suit. Scissors of gravity bestowed by the air, where sound and light gather in time to be here. Seasons of gravity. That's very nice. I never heard this expression before, so it's actually very interesting, makes me think. Because I was reflecting the other day on the fact that, for example, we have all of these elements we're working in alchemy, but obviously we, after, let's say, the very first couple of hundred years Let me just zoom in. After the very first couple of 100 years, we stopped counting ether as an element. However, there is recently there has been a bit of a movement to bring back ether into consideration, especially in the occultist world and especially in the you know, alchemical world. And it feels like it's very much an important kind of element to take into consideration whenever you're doing chemical work and whenever you are applying alchemy to other disciplines in the occult. And I think that tarot would definitely benefit from considering ether as an element again. And ether for me is the space, is obviously astrophysics, is you know, the existence of celestial bodies and the influence that they have on anything related to physics. So we know, for example, that the moon has a very strong influence on tides, and as a matter of fact on any body of water. And since human beings are made predominantly of water, of course the moon has an influence on human behavior. That is actually not, let's say, that is actually scientific proven. It's not something related to any kind of other disciplines other than science. It's just very, very interesting, and I do believe that if we had more funding, it's one of those things, isn't it? I always say, if we had more funding to study this, if you have more funding to study that, we don't, unfortunately. And as a matter of fact, the world is going through a crisis, financial crisis right now, so I don't think there's ever going to be enough funding for anything anytime soon. But going back to the tarot deck, so this is the quality that I expected. I have to say though, that the finish to the touch, it feels a little bit more probably glossy, although the cardstock is not glossy, it's matte, but it feels more, let's say, slippery than the Ophidia Rosa, and it feels more like the Pythia Botanica, although the cardstock is I guess the Ophidia Rosa kind of thickness. There is a very beautiful matte gold, but it's almost got an orangey kind of tint. And just for you to make a comparison, this is my orange you know, pumpkin skeleton for Halloween, and you can see how it's going towards a bit of a shade of orange rather than a dull gold. So I really like this, and this kind of gilding is very precious. It doesn't get chipped, it doesn't hurt your fingers. And these are the backs, and this is a very interesting shade of blue, midnight blue I would call it. So let's have a look at the card, and it's not necessarily a walkthrough, so I'm not gonna stop for each and every card. I'm just gonna show you, because this is literally first impressions for me, and I'm very grateful to the person that sold it to me, because they put back the cards in order. I had no idea that they were actually in order. It could have been you know, sometimes they're lucky, sometimes they're very thorough and they check for damages or flaws. Sometimes, you know, they come to you and they're just perfect. Perhaps someone has just looked through them and they didn't resonate, and so they just rehomed it. I think this was the case. So these are major arcanas. It's very beautiful. One thing that I saw about the Suit of Cups, this is a Suit of Cups, obviously there's the element of water is very predominant, even more than the celestial bodies, I would say. And I always, whenever I see the Four of Cups, I always smile, because this to me looks like a little ghost, like a Boo Tarot. If you know the Boo Tarot, looks like one of the characters in the Boo Tarot. So that's, yeah, that's very beautiful. There's always an element of movement to the waves pictured in the cards of this Suit of Cups, and throughout the core cards as well, as you can tell. Okay, sometimes I like to put the Queen and the King side by side, just to see whether they actually form a couple. And I guess in these very specific tarot decks, where you would say that they are kind of pippish, although they are, so it's a bit of a neither here nor there, or a bit of both, I would say, because they are scenic. You do have illustrations, however you don't find symbols of the traditional RWS. So in some cases, you know, you ask yourself, how do I classify them? Are they scenic? Are they fully illustrated? So they are definitely fully illustrated. These are not lazy pips at all. Look at the Two of Swords. Obviously, the explanation in the leaflet is very interesting. So we read the explanation of the Three of Swords before, and I'm curious to see how on the Ten of Swords they depict a supernova, because it's obviously one of the major events when it comes to space and astrophysics that you can have. Oh, there you go. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. It's like the destruction of a planet with the rebirth of it. Although when there is an explosion, there's always the creation of a black hole. So I would have expected something like that, but that's okay. And it's really interesting. So I don't know if you ever watched Interstellar. So Interstellar is one of my favorite movies, and I've watched it so many times. It is very touching for me. There's many scenes in which the first time I watched it, I actually choked a couple of times. Also because I was watching it with a very good friend of mine, very dear friend of mine, who was already sick at the time, and unfortunately she passed away. And so because it's also about, you know, relationships and human connections, some parts were really harsh to watch with her. But I remember, you know, thinking there is something to the concept of that movie. So the movie says that where all physics and astrophysics fail, there is something that still provides us with hope, and that is love. And love is seen as something that actually transcends time and space. So all of the dimensions. And it's incredibly interesting because, to be honest with you, even though I keep on watching you know, YouTube videos that explain the science behind Interstellar, and in many cases they actually point at the flaws of the theory, I still believe that no one has been able to actually successfully discuss the theory that is presented in the movie. Whether they agree with the theory, that I haven't been able to prove the theory, whether they're against the theory, they actually cannot successfully argue against it. So it's very interesting because it is something that could be very revolutionary for all of us. You know, believing that even when time and space do not come to help with the necessary outcome, you can still do something and you can still transcend them with love. It's a very interesting, mind-blowing concept for me. So this deck feels really good. All of it, I love all of Nicole's decks. I don't have all of them, but I really I'm making my way through, you know, all of them. I only have the Ophidia Rosa, this one as a tarot, and the Pythia Botanica. Let's give it a shuffle. So it feels very nice to the touch. The overhand shuffle is very nice. It's not as sticky as I thought it would be at the beginning. I was really concerned that the feel of the cards of the Ophidia Rosa, for example, when you buy it completely new, it may feel like overhand shuffling is a bit clunky, difficult, because the cards tend to stick, you know, one to the other. Even though I have to say, after you use it for a few times, that actually goes away because the surface smoothens out. And let me try and see. These decks, generally speaking, I can actually riffle shuffle because they're not too big. It's actually standard tarot size, but they are very flexible, let's say. And that is a really good shuffle, I would say. It's very almost one-on-one, the cards, but as you can see, I'm actually struggling to put them, slide them back together, which could mean that also for this one I may have to, you know, a couple of times perhaps spend time shuffling before actually using it. And let's see on which shuffle. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's not too stiff. It needs a bit of shuffling. But I had the same with the Ophidia Rosa, so and it feels already a lot smoother This is just the third time that I shuffle it, and I honestly don't recall the person who sold it to me saying that they have been using it. So it feels actually quite nice now as the cards really slide. So let's have a look. First of all, it doesn't come with any kind of a sample spread. Now that I look at this, no, there isn't. But I'm just going to show you a sample spread. Let's say just a quick 3 cards readings. So for the 3 cards reading, when I don't specify anything peculiar, anything distinct from the usual way in which I read them, I always start with this card, which is something positive for today. So to me, the important to start with something positive is paramount, because whenever I do, this is my daily type of reading, and whenever I start the morning, I want to start on a positive note. I don't necessarily preclude difficult energies or negative energies from entering, because I believe that if there are that, they need to be confronted. But I want to start on a positive note. So something positive for today, something to be mindful about, which is my way of saying something negative, but it's not necessarily something negative. It's something that you have to be mindful about. You have to be grounded in order to be able to face it. And a message for today from the deck. So that's interesting because we have, you know, important cards. We've got one of the mages and we've got 2 court cards. So we got the Emperor. So something positive for today. This is order for me. And something positive is definitely related to the fact that we're going through all of the boxes, and moving is no fun. Everyone knows that. So I'm quite happy to see, you know, that I'm reminded. It's almost a reminder to tell myself, no matter how discouraged I feel, because of my OCD, looking at all of the boxes makes me feel overwhelmed and very much almost in pain. This is a reminder to tell myself that we've done so much already, and, you know, we have the possibility to do even more today. This is something to be mindful about, and it's the Knight of Pentacles. Now, it's funny because I generally speaking look at the Knight of Pentacles as the soldier, so the archetype of the soldier, but as opposed to the Knight of Swords, which is the warrior. So the soldier is, as opposed to the warrior, one that fights because they've been ordered to, so they follow orders. They don't necessarily find their own reason to fight for, but they literally just, it's a job. Okay, it's not a vocation, it's not a calling, it's a job. So the Knight of Pentacles, something to be mindful about. It's probably reminding me to follow some discipline, you know, to probably have a look at the structure and a way, if this is referring to the moving, obviously have a way to do things in such, in an order that will not, let's say, put me in a situation in which I have to go over it again and redo it. And then a message for today is the King of Pentacles, which is definitely that contact back to ourselves, to our corporeal beings, to nature itself, to the very tangible aspect of the element of earth. And that is something that that is one of the main reasons why we've actually moved. Because I really needed to get back to, you know, grounding myself. I felt like the last 8 years that where we lived, I lost touch of many things. And this is, the King is, you know, message for today is to focus my mind on getting back to that sense of propriety that I used to have over myself, my body, my soul, my mind. So this is a very beautiful reading. I'm actually quite grateful to this deck for that. But let's have a look at a couple of pairings, because while looking at the cards, I had a few ideas. So the first pairing is a bit of a dare, because it's with this magical spirit oracle, The Brilliance of You by Alexis Racken. And it's been published by Rockpool. This is a very recent release by Rockpool. There is an ongoing, it's a bit of a dare because there is an ongoing battle, you know, it's kind of a challenge with a group of friends in the tarot community. And basically we're trying to understand which deck will pair well with this oracle, because this oracle is, let's say, because of the artwork and the colors especially, it's not an easy deck to pair. And I'm just going to show you a couple of cards. Let me just zoom out because it's oracle size, obviously. So as you can see, it's really gorgeous. I really love it. The messages on the card is fantastic, but there's also really good titles and keywords. So it's one of those decks that technically ticks all the boxes. When it comes to the cardstock, it's a very beautiful matte, very easy to fan out. There's a nice dull gold edging, even though it is a bit sticky, as you can see, but that's fine. You just have to use the card a couple of times. And the only thing is that I'm not necessarily crazy about how big these borders are, and the fact that they are this kind of cafe latte color. It's kind of an important color. It's not, you know, white or linen color, and because of that, and because of the fact that they're so wide, there's something that makes it very difficult to pair up with. And I think it will pair up, especially when I see cards like this with these kind of colors, I think it will pair up really well with the Gentle Tarot, which is in one of the boxes. So I can't even test my theory. But because of this color, I think it might actually pair well with the Ad Orbita as well, and probably also with the Ophidia Rosa. So let's have a look. So we've got the Fool, the couple of beginnings here. There is a reason you have those dreams, the Mystic, Intuition, High Priestess, Visionary, between the Fool and the Ace of Swords. This is definitely, you know, bringing together the intuition of the Visionary, the Mystic, that starts something. It's always a new project in the making, and you need that kind of foolishness, you know, proper of the Fool, that kind of devil-may-care attitude that makes you take that first step into the unknown. However, there's always a balance that is given thanks to the presence of the Ace of Swords, which is a suit of the mind, and it really brings up together the concept of starting something new, again with the Ace and the Fool, but having the possibility to use your mind and your intuition in order to be able to actually walk down the right path. So it feels like it reads quite well so far. So I am in Divine Flow, Yin and Yang, between the Knight of Cups and the Sun. So I haven't really shuffled that Oracle deck that much. So let me just do it now quickly. Okay, that should be good. By the way, this one has got 44 cards. I don't know if you watched, I did a VR the other day, Tarot of Exception, and one of the prompts was, you know, one of the deal breakers for me is when an Oracle deck has got less than 44 cards, because 44 seems to be kind of the industry standard for acceptance in the tarot community, because we all feel like, you know, we're being short-handed when we have to pay full price for a deck and it only has something like 30 odd cards, which is in many cases Oscar Bell Oracle decks. And it starts to feel a little bit better when it's over 40, but it's definitely something you're happy to pay full price for when it's a deck that has at least 44 cards. And it's funny how you may be from Australia, you may be from the US, you may be from Europe, but there seems to be a very common, almost granted, you know, agreement, you know, in the number of cards that is represented a minimum for an Oracle deck to be acceptable. So I'm liking the aesthetics of the pairing. There is a very strong similarity when it comes to the color palette. As you can see, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to try this out. But even when it comes to the artwork, even though obviously we're not looking at the same type of artwork, but it does resonate a lot. There are similarities, and there's also similarities when it comes to the messages and the energy. For example, we've got here, if you're in need of a lesson, there is wisdom in the trees, spirit of the tree, nature, priestess, inner peace. Between death and the Eight of Pentacles. I really like that because it feels like almost as if it should be read sequentially this way. So you've gone through a rebirth, you've gone through a rite of passage, perhaps you have waken up to a new reality. but you may feel like you don't necessarily have all the information, or you may feel a little bit lost, because every time we go through a rebirth, we're really little. Our souls are very young, and so we need some kind of direction. And sometimes if we don't find it, we need to look at someone that can provide it to us. And this card is telling you there is wisdom in the trees. And the Eight of Pentacles is the card that tells you that you really need to take advantage of all of your skills, and also of all of the benefits that living connected with the world around you and nature around you actually brings to you. And this connection is the one that tells you that you're almost there. You need to keep on going. You have already assessed whether you are on the right path or not, and you're just required to take a few more steps. So it really, as you can tell, because of the expansion of meaning that you can find in the Oracle, this is actually a really good reading. And it's also because, in a way, I really appreciate the Ophidia Rosa and Dista and the Ad Orbita Tarot as well, because they're not... one of the peculiarities that the minors are scenic, but they're not referring back to the symbols of the AWS. That can be quite distracting sometimes. Because let's not forget that, as I said many times before, some of the symbology is very fixed in the AWS. Whereas if you have a deck that is peepish, or has peep minors, or perhaps fully scenic, but you know, that takes a step back from the traditional AWS, it actually lets you use different kind of divination systems, like for example a numerological approach or an alchemical approach, which is very interesting because it pairs up well with this oracle deck. So I would definitely say I like these two together. I recommend these two together. They feel really, really good. But let's have a look at other decks. So the second oracle deck I'm going to pair the Ad Orbita Tarot with is the Oracle of Oddities. Now this is Oracle of Oddities number 1, 2, and 3 together. It's the same author, it's Claire Goodchild, so it's the same author as many other decks, like the Antique Anatomy Tarot. There's a few Lenormand, I think it's called the Memento Mori Lenormand, which can also be used, if I'm not wrong, as an oracle deck. There's also the indie editions of the Antique Anatomy have a couple of different editions. So there's the ephemera edition to the Antique Anatomy, and a different edition, which I don't remember what the name is. I think it was the first. But let's have a look at the Oracle of Oddities and how it pairs up with the Ad Orbita Tarot. Now we got hostility here between the Four of Pentacles and the Hanged Man. This is it's a very interesting take, because I actually see that in the numerological approach to the Four of Pentacles. So the four in numerology is a number of consolidation. What happens is that when you apply that to the alchemical element of earth, which is a very grounding element, very strong, immutable, very static element, you can have stagnation. So that's why most of the time you need to read the Four of Pentacles as not just the fact that you're, let's say, you're consolidating your finances, for example. That's one aspect of the card, but you almost need to see it in some kind of a negative way, as in it's almost as if you're putting all of your money under your mattress and you're not investing it. You know what I mean? So it's the kind of consolidation that can very easily turn into stagnation, which is actually not positive. And so there is this element of hostility that you feel coming from this consolidation, stagnation of your resources. So there's, you know, you're not living in, you don't feel like you are in an environment where your resources can actually have, you know, bear fruit, because there is this stopping, there is this barrier, there's this hostility that really stops you, that pushes you back. And you know, the Hangman in this case, depending on how I see this reading, can be seen either as an advice, so take a different perspective, like the Hangman, you know, being hanged upside down, or perhaps also you may feel like you're sacrificing your resources. that the Hangman can be seen as a sacrifice in many cases, and whether it's a sacrifice that brings some kind of elation, some kind of escape, some kind of resolution, depends on, you know, further readings, but it can be seen this way. So so far I'm actually really liking these two working together. So we got rebirth between the Empress and the Queen of Pentacles. Absolutely, that's your going back to nature of the two cards. We got opposition between a King of Wands and the Ten of Wands. Absolutely, again, it really resonates. The I think, again, it's thanks to the fact that there's one very communicative keyword in the Oracle of Oddities that is very helpful when you just want to have, you just want to focus on one concept instead of having to elaborate on a sentence like we've seen before with the Magical Spirit Oracle. I actually even prefer these two together rather than the Magical Spirit. I think that the background color of both the decks is very similar, even though you do have a slightly warmer kind of tint on the tarot deck. The artwork is very similar, and also one thing that I notice by flipping the cards like that is that they tend to have a very similar use of absences and presence. So blank spaces are very important for both these decks, and it feels really more and more like it's a match made in heaven. It's a very beautiful pair, very beautiful combination. I really enjoy it. I wonder if I don't have the Memento Mori, but I keep on thinking I should get it. Everyone tells me that I should, because I really love these, the Antique Anatomy and, you know, the Oracle of Oddities so much. And I wonder if that would pair even better, but I'm not entirely sure. These two are fantastic, so I don't see how the experience could be made even better than this. So just one last reading. We've got hope between the Seven of Wands and the Five of Pentacles. So in this case, it's you know, it almost takes a very distinct path when you see the card from the Oracle, because in some cases, depending on what the keyword is, it feels as if it were an encouragement or an advice, or, you know, like a divination, a divinatory meaning. So in this case, it's a support, it's a card of support. It tells you that you feel like you're sticking to your guns, and in many cases, the Seven of Wands feels like there's this opposition from the others, and you're the one that is against everyone else, and you don't really understand what's going on. That's the situation on the Seven of Wands. You're sticking to your guns because you feel down, you know, in your core, that you're actually on the right path, or you're right about something, but no one else is. And so you're against everyone else, and you can feel lonely, but there is hope. Even when you feel like you lost everything, you feel like you had to fight everyone else and you've been left out in the cold, there is hope. So it's almost as if it was an encouragement to say, pursue, you know, what you really care for, your goal, because even though it feels like you're on your own, you're actually not, and there is hope on the horizon. That's a really beautiful pairing. Really happy about these two together. So another deck I want to try out with the Ad Orbita is the Outlaw Oracle. This is a really interesting Oracle deck. Absolutely, it pairs up. If you have the Savvy Soul Tarot, it pairs up really well with it. But I would say even with other collage, modern collage, let's say, or photo-related kind of tarot decks, I absolutely love this deck. The messages in it are fantastic. It's envisioned and conjured by Hilary Banks herself, creative design by Jana St. Levy. It's really gorgeous. I appreciated this deck ever since I saw it on Instagram. I knew I had to have it. And the quality is superb as well. So the cardstock is magnificent. It's really silky, matte, very easy to shuffle, very easy to fan out. And as you can see, it's got that kind of photography style that points almost to a little bit of antiquing effect down on the cards. I believe it's a filter anyway, but it's so beautiful. It reminds me of the 90s for some reason. and I really like it. It's got really beautiful backs as well, as you can see. Let me just give it a quick shuffle, and let's see how this one pairs up with this Ad Orbita Tarot deck, because I think we can find something. Now I want a little bit more light. There you go, that's better. So the reason why I thought about this Oracle deck is because this one, like the Oracle of Oddities, has a very clear message, very clear keywords in the cards, as opposed to, you know, other oracles. And that really, I saw that when I was pairing it up with the Oracle of Oddities, that really helped expand, you know, and use the tarot as an opportunity to expand on the message given by the oracle. Now let's have a look. So when it comes to the aesthetics, obviously we don't have the same aesthetics. I mean, we have a photographic deck in the center, but that doesn't matter, because aesthetics don't necessarily have to be the same in order to be able to be pleasing to the eyes. So I'm actually liking these two together as well. So we got, let's have a look at how they read together. So we got Evil Eye, and we got the element of air, and we got protection and jealousy between the Eight of Pentacles and Death. So I feel like in this case it's a warning. It's a warning to say, whilst you're completing your what you're doing, whilst you're, you know, you've embarked upon this journey, you know that you're on the right path, and you know that you still have a little bit to go, but just beware not to lose sight of your goal. Beware to still protect yourself as if you were just at the beginning of the journey, because it's true that we tend to, whenever we can see the finish line, we tend to, at least in my case, I tend to get a bit slack. And then in that case, I like to be reminded that it's not over yet, and I need to exercise the same amount of caution, you know, to be able to arrive to this kind of really big transformation that is just around the corner, but it's not there yet. So we got Pioneer, Trailblazer, Explorer, Long Haul Driver between the Two of Pentacles and the Six of Swords. And that's fantastic, because the Six of Swords, we all know that it's that kind of journey that you have to take because you move into something better, but it's not a journey that you would have taken, you know, with a light heart. So it's the Long Haul Driver, which is fantastic, because the pioneers, of course they love probably to explore, but on the other hand they also miss home, and the pioneer is the one that brings home after a long drive. They bring home to a new place. So it's the kind of thing you're doing in the Six of Swords, because you go from one situation to another one and you hope it's going to be a better one, and that's exactly what migrants were doing. So I'm already liking these two together. They at least the keywords resonate really well, and there's a lot of cards that that's the main reason why I like this Oracle deck so much. There's a lot of cards about being a free spirit, a free-minded person, doing your own thing, asserting your own personality and thriving with it, which is something that you don't always find in grounded decks. So this is a very grounded and grounding kind of deck. There's a lot of other decks that have very positive messages, but they're not grounded. I don't know if I'm making any sense, because when I say grounded, I say that it's always referring back to life as we see it and not as we think it should be. It's life as it is. Other decks are always showing you a very strong connection to the cosmos, which is absolutely fine, but it doesn't feel grounded. So in this case, this is a very uplifting, positive deck, but it's still grounded. It's not you. The usual oracle decks are almost too kind in their messages, saying you are a queen, you're perfect, etc. I do believe that in many cases you have to be careful not to be transported away, to be lifted away from your goal when you use those oracle decks, which are really beautiful, very helpful for a very specific kind of work. But if you want to stay focused on what you're doing, this oracle and other grounding and grounded kind of oracles are a lot better. And not to talk about the fact that I just absolutely love the titles in many of the cards. So whiskey is bringing together stubbornness, perseverance, and numbing. And when you read these 3 keywords related to the title whiskey, you can't not agree, because it's absolutely what whiskey is. It is stubbornness in the sense that it's not something that you appreciate the first drink. Whiskey, you know what I mean? It's very harsh to the taste, and it needs to grow on you. But it takes perseverance for sure. But it's also numbing, because that's a property of alcohol in general. So I really like the fact that it's between the Ace of Wands and Judgment, because you need to go through your journey. You're starting your journey in the physical realm, and you need to go through that and be stubborn and persevere. But you sometimes also need a kind of numbing, and it reminds me of perhaps even the whole evolution throughout the Suit of the Wands, in which you achieve number 10, you reach the number 10, and you're just completely numb and exhausted because you've taken up too much upon yourself, which is exactly how I feel like now with all of the boxes. I'm literally surrounded by them. But there is Judgment. There is something that, comes to the surface. It comes to your help. Or there's, unexpected news or something that will bring a little bit of fresh air, perhaps, onto your path. So I really, really enjoy this too. I'm quite happy that I'm finding oracle decks that pair up really well with the Ad Orbita, even though they don't necessarily, so it's not, it just as easily paired up the Pythia Botanica. You understand, it's the same author, same type of cards, it's the same art style. Of course it would have paired up really well, but I feel that when you have a little bit of variety, it's always nice, because it can also give you a different kind of take or different opportunities to use the deck. So let's have a look. There's another one that I want to pair up with this one, actually another 2 decks. So I just wanted to try this one quickly. This is the Reflection Mindful Ritual cards, and it's a deck that, to be honest with you, I really like it. It's very beautiful, but there's a slight problem when it comes to the many of the cards. The writings on the card, as you can see, for example, this is a good example. I can't really, so make peace with your past so it won't disturb your present. Fair enough, it's beautiful messages, absolutely, and it's beautiful cardstock, but some writing is so pale that I really struggle to read it, even when I'm using my reading glasses. But I do believe that, it's not all of the cards, of course. Remain a student always between the 2 of Wands and the Ace of Swords. That's perfect. That is literally, if you ask me, the cards related to, the remaining a student, always wanting to learn something, always using your brain to apply to the new project and wanting to expand your horizon. That is absolutely perfect. And see, for example, in this case, obviously you can't see anything up to here. And here it says, what's the best that could happen between death and the lovers? Wow, that's amazing. Look at this pairing. Okay, what's the best that can happen? You're in front of a choice and you're hesitating. You don't know what to do. That's the lovers card. You have a choice to make. And you're probably scared because it's bringing a lot of transformation. But what's the worst what's the best? And don't ask yourself what the worst could happen. What is the best that could happen, in order to be able to have the courage, gather the courage to make that choice. So we have a Venn diagram with acceptance and growth and wisdom in between, discomfort and contrast. So what is bringing us discomfort and contrast and acceptance and growth, they have in common, and is the concept of wisdom. So we got wisdom between the 10 of Wands and the Star, which is, again, fantastic. It almost feels like the Star was acceptance and growth, and the 10 of Wands was discomfort and contrast, and these 2 cards indeed have the concept of wisdom in common. Okay, so I'm quite happy about this pairing as well. When it comes to the aesthetics, obviously the mindful ritual cards have a very similar kind of color palette. It's a muted color palette, a muted, even the artwork, to be honest, is very minimalist, it's very simple. I'm not a fan on a card where there's writings upside down like that as well, because it really makes me struggle to read it. And when I struggle to read a card, not to read the meaning of the card, but to read the actual message on the card, it means that it lifts me up from the reading, and it is kind of distracting. But I really like the messages together. These two are even better than the others. I didn't think, I just had a hunch that it could have been, you know, positive, but I didn't know that it would have been this mind-blowing beautiful. So obviously the mindful ritual cards can also be used, you know, as an altar card. For example, you pull a card every day and you just reflect on the meaning of the card. Stay in your lane, for example, between the Nine of Pentacles and the Chariot. Absolutely, the Chariot is the overcoming of obstacles, and you just receive a windfall. So stay in your lane. Don't, you know, you're almost there. You're on a 9, so you're almost there. And it's also the Chariot is bringing resolution and overcoming of the obstacles, but you really need to be focused and disciplined. So that's what the Oracle is saying, stay in your lane. So taking care of yourself is also productive between the Knight of Pentacles, which is, Knight of Pentacles is the soldier, and is also the person who's, you know, almost killing themselves in order to carry out those orders. So you can actually take a bit of a break and rest, because you'll still be productive, and just get in touch with your own emotions. Really excellent readings. Really excellent readings. So let's see the last deck, which is actually a tarot deck. So as I was saying, the next deck and the last deck I'm going to pair the Ad Orbita with is another tarot deck, and it's the Modern Seer Tarot. I feel like these two can actually go really well together, and because of the very minimalist style of the Modern Seer, we can actually use it as an oracle. Or let's say not as an oracle, but the same way we would use an oracle when we do these kind of spreads. So with a tarot in the center, in the middle, and two tarot with a deck with an oracle, sorry, in the center, and two tarot cards on the sides. So the Two of Swords is, you know, being stuck between a rock and a hard place, between the Hierophant and the Two of Pentacles. There's another way to refer back to the duality of the two. So you're called to actually make a choice, but it's not an easy one, because you don't necessarily have a lot of options in front of you. So we've got, for example, the Sun, which is the unadulterated joy, the pure joy between the Queen of Cups and the Wheel of Fortune. And this is telling me, for example, that kind of joy that is purely emotional, so it's very on the surface that you can get, is something that is very easy to stop, to seize. So we need to be able to cement it, we need to be able to ground it in order to be able to see it in the long run, so to have it consistent, rather than something that is referring back to a fleeting moment, for example, which is more likely of the interpretation of the Sun. We've got the Ten of Wands with exertion or taking way too much upon yourself between the Queen of Swords, and the Queen of Swords is the person that is resilient, has been through the Ten of Wands. This is a person that has been through that situation and has been, you know, in many cases you will see that the resilience of the Queen of Swords comes also from, you know, the fact that they have been left out in the cold. There has been this exile that has been brought upon them, and they have survived. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, because obviously I expect many of you to have this deck, the Ad Orbita Tarot, and I'm very curious to know if you pair it up with other decks. Just let me know. Also let me know if you agree with my opinions when it comes to the decks I've been pairing it with. I really loved it with those decks, all of them. And I think that we do have a case here to pair it up with the modern Seer Tarot as well, because if we take, as I do, you know, a keyword that represents the card, that could be the keyword that it could be also coming from an oracle deck. And I reckon that the art style and again, the use of the blank spaces, the continuous lines in the modern Seer Tarot are very beautiful together with the Ad Orbita. So that was it for today, and thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. More to come. Have a great day.